Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing Project Cars 2 on the GeForce GTX 1050 Ti. For FPS monitoring, I'll be using CAM. If you want to download the software, there's a link down in the description. And if you enjoy the content and want to support the channel directly, there's a link to the Patreon page down in the description as well. So Project Cars 2, I'll be doing 1080p, 900p, 720p and 1440p. To skip any of those sections of the video, check the description below. So first I'll show you 1080p trying to get 60 frames per second, then I'll crank up the settings to the max, except in MSIA and super sampling. On the G4560 it was possible to be at 60 frames per second, but I saw some drops in the GPU usage when there are many cars on screen, so I decided for the rest of the video to use the overclock Ryzen 3 1200. So remember, on 900p and 720p you wouldn't notice much of a difference in frame rates using the G4560 compared to 1080p, since it was already limiting the GPU when there was a lot going on, as I said before. On both 900p and 720p it was much easier to get 60 frames per second, but it was still impossible to use max settings without dropping below 60 frames per second when there's a storm. I'll talk more about that in a second. To get 60 frames per second at 1440p, I had to drastically lower the settings, and it wasn't so hard to do unless there was a storm going on, which can drop the frame rate down to around 50. I'll now talk about CPUs and the options menu. So the G4560 was enough to get 60 frames per second pretty much all the time if your GPU can keep up. But I saw some dips every now and then with that CPU, especially when there's a lot going on, like many cars racing at once. That's why I used an overclock Ryzen 3 1200 in order to be able to get the GPU usage higher. And by using that CPU, I mainly saw GPU usage drops when we were around 90 frames per second or higher. The options menu will tell you to restart the game when changing resolution or textures, but other things fortunately don't require you to do so. The most demanding stuff that you should lower first is MSAA, super sampling, reflections, environment map, particle level, particle density, shadow quality, and detailed grass. Other than that, it's usually fine to play. Lower the track and car detail if your CPU is the limitation. It helps a little bit there. If that's not enough, lower all that I told you in groups for a bigger performance boost. But reflections seem to be the most demanding stuff so far. You can play with up to 31 opponents. In all my videos I use 25 instead, since I don't expect everyone to use 31, which in my opinion seems like too much. I also tested both sun and storm conditions. You'll always clearly see that storms are a huge hit in performance compared to clear, since we have a ton of reflections and particles involved, which hammer the GPU. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you keep enjoying the video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.